As entrepreneurs, we all have a reason why we chose to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to capture those stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. Danielle R. Harris is a marketing and messaging consultant who teaches online business owners how to attract and sign clients by sharing their unique stories in their messaging. She has worked in marketing for over 10 years and believes that for most business owners, their story is their most underutilized asset. Danielle is based in Metro Detroit, where she was born and raised. Danielle is known for her love of chocolate and travel. Hey, Danielle, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So let's start off at the very beginning because I've heard a very good place to start. So let's talk a little bit about yourself because I want to hear first, what is your ninja skill?
It's so interesting. So, one of the things that I did at the very start, very early on in my career, is I worked in the concrete industry, and people are just like, "What? What is that?" My job, my role was to make books about concrete sound interesting to people and get people wanting and dying to buy these books to go to conferences, like really be all about books about concrete. And so I said that my superpower is that if I can make concrete sound interesting, like I can make anything else. Nothing else is as boring, as dry as concrete. So you automatically are that much more interesting. And so, that's where I started off. I worked in marketing for over 10 years within that industry, learned so much. And one of the things that I was just feeling is if while I love the work that I did, it got me so many opportunities, was able to do so many different things, travel around the world. That wasn't my passion. I loved helping people in various different fields, various different areas bring their dreams to life. And that's something that I really wanted to do for myself. And I decided that, yep, I needed to go out and do something else. And a lot of times people were telling me that, like, oh, it's not that interesting, or no, I don't really know how to talk about myself the way that these other people do. And I had to remind them, you're more interesting than concrete. Like, I literally spent years and years and years talking about this. You are more interesting than that. And once they realized that, and I showed them like all the different things that I had to do, they realized, like, yeah, no, you're right. I am, in fact, more interesting than concrete. And that just really bolstered them up and realized, yeah, I can talk about the things that I do in a way that is going to be interesting, that's going to attract people in. Because if there is a market for concrete, there is a market for the thing that you are trying to do.
Exactly. And so I guess your next book series is going to be on paint and its drying capacity and stuff
Of
like that.
course,
Exactly.
yeah, it's the whole theme there.
And I 100% understand where you're coming from because that was one thing with me. I mean, I've had almost 20 years in the learning industry and I had to teach FDA compliance, and that is possibly the driest thing, and nobody wants to be in these. So I get where you're at. I get what you're doing. You know?
hmm
And sometimes making those subjects something that is interesting is difficult. And I guess so that that's one of the that's a ninja skill. I mean, absolutely in and of itself. What specific things do you do that cause it to be interesting? Like what do you do to spice something up like concrete?
Right. So one of the things that you have to realize that there are two different audiences. One, there's going to be someone that's interested in it, no matter how dry it is. That's not necessarily always going to be the norm. Like there are people that are just like they have dedicated their lives to learning and knowing more about this subject. They care. But it's not always necessarily those people that you're trying to get a hold of. There's also like a bit of a bigger, larger market. And so if I were trying to say, like, okay, why should you care about concrete? Why should you care about people that invest their time and energy into this? You say things about the fact that concrete is what makes the world go round. If you didn't have concrete, you wouldn't have bridges to go across. You wouldn't be able to be in the different building structures that you're in, and you wouldn't be able to drive on the roads that you go across. And you know this for sure when you are on a road where you're just like, there's a pothole here, or is this there? Like it makes your drive so difficult. Like it's so fundamental to the life that we lead every single day. And so when you frame it in that type of way, you're just like, oh, okay, I guess it is interesting how they're able to make things like stay up for as long as they do. Or oh, it is interesting how you're able to how it's so integral to life. I never thought about that way. And those are the things that you have to think about from like your own business, your own perspective. Like how is what you're doing like truly so integral to what it is that you do on a day-to-day life, that not only can everybody see the value of it, but the people that are really dialed into it can also say like, yep, like this is the thing that I'm doing. Because if you were to say, be someone that was so into meditation and people were just like, I don't care about meditation, it doesn't do anything. And if you were able to frame it in such a way where people were just like, oh, like that is so true, you one, get a convert, and two, the people that are already doing it, like they feel so much better about the fact that like, yep, and I'm already doing this and I can do it so much deeper and so much better. But it's how you can shift and change the perspective of what it is that you're doing so people can see it in like this whole new light where they have so much appreciation about what it is that they do.
And I guess that what it boils down to is making it relevant for people.
Exactly. Exactly. Relevancy is all, it's all the key.
Mhm. So now, how did you get into this? Like, how did you get into concrete and this ninja skill? How did this come about? There's got to be a story.
You know what? It's this is truly a boring story. It was one of the first things that I did right out of college. So I spent time, interesting story, going even further back. I thought that I was going to be a film and tele no, even further back, I thought I was going to be a doctor. And I had this whole master plan about how I was going to go to med school, but I was also going to get a minor in business because I was going to have my own practice, obviously, and I needed to know how to run everything. But the most interesting class I ever took was my marketing class, and I was just hooked from there. And I thought like, oh, well, maybe I still want to do this. I don't know. And I realized that actually I was just watching way too much Grey's Anatomy at the time, and I didn't actually want to be a doctor. I just liked the concept of the doctors on TV. And so I took a little bit of that and I did a little bit of film production while I was in school, but I realized that I actually really liked marketing. I really liked business. And I went from there. And one of the first internships that I got right out of school was in the concrete industry. I did not know what to expect. It was actually very interesting. One of the interview questions was, do you know the difference between concrete and cement? Thankfully, I'm one of those people that remembers random tidbits from Jeopardy, and I actually knew the answer to that question. And I went from there, and I had this long career. I did everything from trade show marketing there and branding and all the way up to international development and opening up office internationally. And so, no, it was a nice long career that I just happened to fall into only because I realized that, oh, yeah, no, I don't want to be a doctor. I just like watching them on TV.
It's interesting how that happens because the very first client I ever had when I went into business myself doing e-learning, when I finally went out of the corporate world into my own world, was an OSHA compliance company. And it's really interesting how many, like understanding in Cook County, like Chicago, cranes have to have a cord on their mechanism to make them work instead of jumping wireless. It's weird stuff that you get.
You just
And
pick up all
sometimes
this knowledge.
exactly. And I am also one of those people that just kind of randomly picks up weird stuff. Like, did you know that a shrimp's heart is in its head? Just stuff that I'll never have to know. I'm great at trivia night, but beyond that, we're good.
Hmm.
I do have to ask though, okay, what is the difference between concrete and cement? Because I'm sure that nobody knows this.
Yeah. So think of cement as flour and concrete as cake.
Okay.
You put the flour is an ingredient in the cake, same
Uh,
as cement is an ingredient in concrete. So there's water in there, there's sand, there's different other rocks, all of that makes up concrete. Cement is purely just like one of the core ingredients, like flour.
that was very well explained. And I think we now know a little bit more about what we're standing on probably than we did when we started, which is always a good thing. Learning's always great.
Of course, of course. Now you'll win that question on Jeopardy.
Absolutely, we'll be all set for it. So now there's a transition, if I'm right, between like the working for the concrete and then going on to bigger and better things. What are those other things that you're going on to now that we all start with a foundation? Like I said, I started with OSHA, you started with concrete that gets us going in our direction. So that's you learned you loved it. Now this is the path that you get to kind of start to go in your own direction. And I take it at this point, you're going in your own direction outside of that you're transitioning to the next phase, I should say, is probably the
Mhm.
easiest way to explain it. What's that next phase look like for you?
Yeah, for me, it's working with a lot of female minority-owned business owners who are really looking to make their own businesses work. They are very passionate about what it is that they do, but what they don't know a lot about is necessarily marketing. and they need to understand, like, okay, what are the things I should be doing? I know what I know, but I need other people to know what I know and that I know something and that I can be helpful. And so it's really just my core thing is helping them to really shine a light on what it is that they do it to audiences that may not know them, and how to get them in front of new people that they can then go and help and serve, so that they can really shine and focus on what it is they know. Like I've worked with people who are really passionate about helping people get their money together, whether it's getting out of debt or whether it's managing their money if they're an entrepreneur, or saving more and investing more. And really, they know those parts like the back of their hand. But it's then getting other people to know and realize that, like, oh, this is important, this is relevant for you, and helping to shape the marketing that they're putting out there, whether it's speaking on stages, whether it's, creating a podcast, whether it's posting on Instagram. How can they share that message in a way that people are going to really receive that? And so it's really how I love helping people say, like, you're brilliant at this. Let's talk about it from this perspective, and realize that you can break this down even further because you know so much. And then people don't know nearly as much as you, and they can find so much value in even like the smallest grain kernel of knowledge that can blow their mind. You just don't realize how much you know, and how much breaking it down to even smaller parts can be so impactful. And so that's what I love, helping people realizing how much of an impact they can do by just sharing one instance, one story, one part of what they know.
Exactly. And I think that's something that as entrepreneurs, we know the term marketing. We kind of have
Mm-hmm.
that. We know it's a buzzword. We know it's something we want. We know it's there. It's where does it fit into our grand scheme? Where does it fit into our path, our buyer's path? Like what do we need to do with it? And I know for me, it was something really difficult, especially being, an expert in keynotes and things, and expert in online learning. I just sort of expected people to know what I was doing because I was at that expert level. And it took me a second to step back and go, great, I've been doing this for so long. I can go from point A to point F in a single bound because I've just done it for a while. People need B, C, D, and E.
Mm-hmm.
And I think marketing helps to kind of step people back, get that fill in B, C, D, and E, to help people to be able to say, here's what I actually do, and to give them some level of reality inside of their potential clients' minds to be able to say, okay, here's where you fit in my world, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things also where, like, if you're thinking about a keynote, people think, well, that is something that I want to do, but that feels so far off. That feels like a mile away. I want to be able to do that, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there. Having a story of simply starting, which is what I'm all about. I'm all about telling stories in your marketing. Having a story of not just like A to B, like A to B, like just the start of it, just the early, very beginning, gets people to buy in, like, oh, that could be possible for me. Like, this is the step that I can take. And these little tiny steps can all lead to what's possible, is being this keynote, is to create this online course, is to, whatever it is. It's having those very small stories of starting, how it can be so simple for you to just get started, and showing that those are the really fundamental things that you need in order to get to that final goal. Because I think a lot of times we're just thinking about that final goal at the end, and it's great and it's fantastic and I love it. And you do need to talk about your clients and your people who have done that. But then you have a whole other batch of people that are just like, I want that, but I also don't know how to start. Starting is scary. I don't know if I start, if I'm going to even make it to the very end. And so I like balancing, talking about the stories and hyping up all that you've done, but also tell just as many stories in your marketing about people who've just started, who've just taken that first step, and what that initial first step win looks like, that gives people hope that what you're trying to work towards is possible, and that those smaller wins, like, they're not really that small, like, they're foundational, and they all help to build to where you're trying to go. Like, that's really what your marketing needs to do as well. It needs to talk about the big and the quote small, because they're not really small. They're like, they're the keys.
The individual steps you have to take. And you're right,
Mm-hmm.
the first step is always the hardest one. And sometimes done is better than perfect. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people out there that I've seen who have just tried to get the perfect marketing thing, and they've read every single book there is about it. And, they feel like they live in the same house as Russell Brunson because they've been in his head so long, stuff like that, where they realize getting it done sometimes is taking that first step. Sometimes it's not, it might not necessarily work right. It might not necessarily be what you wanted, but we're going to take that first step and do it.
Hmm.
And I guess that's it. So I do want to actually, I've got a personal story behind some of this, the marketing that I've done. When I first started in business, I spent, I think it was $15,000 in 1 year on a marketing campaign that got 0 leads. And for me, that was an issue because it's like a huge, we're in business. Sometimes we do things and they don't work. It is what
Hmm.
it is. But I think a lot of people are also scared because there's a lot of people in the marketing industry right now. It seems like it's really flooded, and there can be a lot of money involved with it. And what can we do what is the best way to select somebody in marketing, and somebody that you can work with, somebody that I know is going to get some version of results? What do results look like? I mean, I think in our mind we have results as this one thing. It might be a completely different reality. So I
Yeah.
guess, what are some of the questions we ask for it? Like
So I
what
think that's being very clear about what is it that you're wanting. For some people, they want an email list that's full of people that are ready to buy. Other people want to decide, okay, this is the strategy that I want to put together that's going to work. There are a lot of different marketing results out there, just like there are a lot of different sales types of results. There are a lot of different things to focus on, and I think you need to be very clear about what it is that you want to do.
Mm,
So let's say that you're a person that, creating content is a problem for you. So then you're going to be looking at people who are having results, having testimonials, having things that are saying, like, here are the types of people that I've worked with. And they've been able to go from not creating anything ever to posting regularly. Here are their testimonials. You can go and talk to them. People who are open and saying, like, here, you can go and talk to the people that I've worked with in the past. I think that's one of the big things. I also like to look at the individual's background. Like, do they have experience in marketing? Is that something that they've ever done before? Or was this something that they were new to within the past like year and a half? And they were just like, oh, like I did this one thing and it was great and it worked. And now I'm going to teach you how to do the exact same thing. There are a lot of people that have that type of expertise. And no, not to knock them because they could have a really great thing that they figured out and now they want to sell that. But a lot of times when it comes to marketing, there are a lot of foundational things I love and like really emphasize like knowing the foundations of things. And a lot of people who have just started, they're not very clear on that. So just knowing what that background is. But for me, really, if you're looking at how do I decide what person to work with, um, I'm going to really look at what are the very specific results that I'm looking for, and is the person I'm looking at, are they matching that same thing? Because I think a lot of times we can get very much swept up in the, oh yeah, like their marketing phrases, like all of this, and I kind of want this. But when you realize that, oh, they're talking about growing over here, but I actually don't have any audience at all, and they're not talking about how to grow my exposure to things like it's not going to add up. So I think it's really much taking yourself, stepping back a little bit and really being specific about what are my goals? What do I want to do right now within the next 3 to 6 months? And are these steps going to be very much in alignment with the goals that I have? And if they aren't, and if you're just like, no, I got really swept up in the marketing, this realize like, okay, I will set this down and go someplace else. But if the people are just like, no, like I said that I wanted to have a podcast within the next 3 to 6 months, and this person specifically helps new people start off with a podcast to get 12 episodes ready to go so that I can then go and use that as a distribution channel to help bring in more leads. Like that's what they specialize in. Then that's the person that you're going to want to work with versus the person that's just like, oh, yeah, like ads. And you're just like, oh, I have a podcast. I want to do ads. And it wasn't in congruence with each other. Like you need to be very clear and specific about what your goals are and are the people that you're looking at really matching up with the goals that you have.
mhm. And what happens? So as entrepreneurs, sometimes we have this amazing thing that we want to put it out there to the world, and we have no idea what those goals are right now. It's just sort of trying to figure out, especially solopreneurs, like right in
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of business, where my job title is yes, all the things.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yep.
getting to that transition point where I realize that I have to pull in an expert to be able to do marketing. How would you help somebody in that situation where they have no idea where to go to at least get some goals defined, even if there's very high level goals, just something?
Yeah. So I the people that I tend to work with, I start at the very beginning of what exactly is your story, your expertise, what can you do? Who are the people that are going to be most helped and beneficial to taking on those expertise? And how can you communicate that in a way that's going to really appeal to them? Like, that's really the foundational basics of everything.
Mhm.
Once you have a handle on those things, then you're going to get on top of like, oh, okay, so where should I be going to reach new people? Because you're going to have to then sell the offer. Do I need to look in this platform versus that? I've worked with people who do a lot of work in the career space and they decide like, oh, well, I want to be on Instagram, but it actually makes more sense for career-based things for you to be over on LinkedIn or potentially even on TikTok or YouTube. So it's making sure that there is a fit match. And then there's also the aspect of I need to actually grow my sphere of influence. I need to talk and meet more people. So like those are some of the building steps. So like your goals at first should be, so number one, be very clear. What is it that I can do? What is my expertise? Am I very clear on what that is? Can I communicate that to someone else? Number
Mhm.
two, who are those people that are going to be most benefited by this? A lot of times people are very surface level when they think about this, like, oh yeah, they're going to be men between the ages of 35 and 65 and they're going to want to do this, that, and the other, but they don't really know on a deeper level what are the motivations they have, what are the fears they have, what are like the other things that are running through their head as they're making a purchase and buying decision. And so those are the things that I really help to bring out for my clients. I work with them to figure out, how do I do the research to even find out what that is if I don't know what that is. I help them to then map out, here's the type of things that you should be doing and talking about that really gets the people saying like, ooh, you're inside my head as you're talking about this. Like those are the types of things that I really help them through. So then you can then go about and doing like all the other things like writing a website or creating a podcast, because I believe that if you don't have these core things, then you actually don't even have enough to start talking about things, because you'll put something out there and realize 3 months later, oh, this actually isn't relevant because I actually didn't know exactly what I was talking about at all, which is precisely what happened to a couple clients of mine. They were like, oh, I should have worked with you first before I did all this stuff on my website because I wasn't clear on who exactly it was that I was talking to. And
Mhm.
I wrote for one person, but I'm actually talking to someone that has completely different issues. So when I
Mhm.
talk about foundations, like that's as foundational as it gets. And those are going to be the core things that help decide and dictate what direction you need to go within your business.
Mhm. So, because I'm the story guy and I love to hear stories about stuff, and I think stories are also the greatest way to make people to help people to understand exactly what you do. What is one client you're like, dude, I'm really proud of this. I'm proud of the transformation.
Yeah, so I have a client who is honestly, they are phenomenal in and of itself. They are really good at helping people to make 30, $50,000 more within their careers. Like they help people to just really leverage the online space to get amazing, fantastic jobs. What her problem was is that she was calling in an audience that wasn't necessarily like the right fit. She was getting a lot of people who were just like, okay, like they want a job that pays that much more. They actually didn't have the money to invest because they were just like, I've been laid off. I don't have any money. I'm at a job that's not bringing in that much. So I can't pay, a couple $1,000s to hire someone to help me get a particular job. And one of the things that we went through and did is we looked at who were the clients that were the most eager to pay her and who were getting the best results, and combing through all of the information that she had, which she had amazing data collection information, which I could go on a whole nother tangent talking about that. But one of the things that we were able to do is see like, okay, these are the people that are really getting the most results. They are mothers. They have multiple kids, they're married, and they have like 10 plus years of experience. So they are looking to hop from like mid-level management to be like a senior type role and getting those like $50,000 plus promotions, raises, like that's going to be the norm. They're not hurting for money, but they want to take a strategic next step in their career. And so, like, really combing through that type of information and telling stories that really hit on that, whether it's the stories of the clients that she's already had and her own story, because she was able to do that as well. Like, she was able to get clients super quickly just because she was going through looking at the data, being very foundational of like, who are the people that I'm talking to, and then telling stories to reflect that. And it was just like I want to say that we had our first call and she was able to book in like 2 clients just from like minor tweaks that we had just based off of that. And then going on to get like amazing launches and bring in people into her group program. So with that, I was just like, oh, that's amazing. That's fantastic. And it's all just looking at the information that she had, telling a great story and talking about like how it started and like the end result that was at the end that everyone wants a better job that's paying more money. And she was telling exactly that to the exact right people.
Mhm. And I think that's important. A mentor of mine says that there's a difference between opinion and counsel. And counsel is, I've done this before and I want to show you how. And we're showing the path. Opinion is sort of, I've kind of know about it a little bit. And I think what's one of the things is, especially as entrepreneurs, bringing somebody in to give us counsel on a specific pain point that we have, like what you said with your client, where they weren't targeting the right people. We bring in an expert for that counsel to be able to do it. So I think that's an awesome thing. And I'm a huge advocate for counsel. So it sounds like you were able to help her a lot too. And I think it's just kind of retargeting and getting you going in the right direction, especially somebody who knows what they're doing and who has the expertise to be able to help you implement it as well. So
Yeah,
awesome.
exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
so we're getting towards the end of the podcast episode here, and I do have one question that I always like to ask all of my guests, and that is there a podcast or a book at some point in the past that has had a significant impact on your life?
Back in the day, when I say back in the day, I mean a couple years ago, when I first decided to start my business, there was a book that was, I want to say it was not like woo woo, but it was like very like inspirational. It was called Big Magic that I loved reading. And I
Hmm.
think that was just very much a book that was about trusting in the process, trusting that like you know what it is that you're wanting to do and create in the world, and following that. Not saying that, oh, like drop everything, burn everything, but it's about believing that if you wanted to create something, go and act on the creation of that, the development of that, which I think at the very start of the entrepreneurship journey is very important of trusting, like, hey, like I have this spark, I want to do something, go after that, go and fulfill that. So I think that's a very great book. I think it's Elizabeth Gilbert that writes that book.
Mhm.
But recently, the book that I'm very much about is called Grit by Angela Duckworth. And so I think for as much as you have this initial spark and energy to go through and create and do something, what gets you going for the long term is having grit, tenacity, sticking with itness. And grit is all about what it takes to persevere in the long run. And not only that, how to grow that in yourself, because it does take passion, it does take a desire, but it also takes a willingness to keep at it and to self-improve and be focused on how you want to improve on yourself for the love of it. And so those 2 books together, depending on where you're at in your journey, if you're just like, I want to be inspired, read Big Magic. If you are in this, you've been in the business, growing your business space for a while, and you're just like, okay, like when is this going to happen for me? I don't know what to do. Regret. That's going to teach you a lot of lessons from Olympians, from West Point graduates, from professional athletes. It's going to tell you a whole bunch of like science and data backed things that are going to support you how you can stay persistent, gritty, and hit great successes in your life and career.
Yeah, the Grit by Duckworth is an amazing book. I really love that book, and I think it's a really important message. And so, yeah, she's got some amazing wisdom in there.
Oh
So
yeah.
anyway, Danielle, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I truly appreciate you being here.
No, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Danielle, click the link in the description.